Welcome to Meteorology Matters. If you're looking for more in-depth conversations about all this and want to see visuals that'll help you understand this stuff better, be sure to follow meteorologist Rob Jones on Instagram. That's meteorologist. On TikTok, it's TV meteorologist. And over on YouTube, follow Rob Jones Hurricane, where you can also find the Meteorology Matters playlist. Okay, so today we're diving into some really troubling stuff, things that could seriously mess with our ability to understand and prepare for severe weather, and environmental challenges.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at a whole bunch of recent actions that, when you look at them all together, paint a really disturbing picture, something we're calling
Trump Nazi bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trump Nazi bullshit.
Absolutely.
We're going to look at weakened protections for migratory birds.
Right.
We're going to see the disappearance of a super important tool that was designed to predict future climate risks.
Yeah.
And we're going to look at major upheaval within FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the agency that's tasked with disaster response. And then on top of all that, we're also going to look at potential threats to NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
Right.
So our goal today on Meteorology Matters is to kind of pull out the really important information from all of this to connect the dots, so you, the listener, really understand what's at stake here.
Yeah.
All right, so let's unpack this Trump Nazi bullshit. Let's start with these weakened protections for migratory birds.
Okay. So what's really interesting here is the Interior Department, they suspended 20 legal opinions that were put in place during the Biden administration.
Okay.
One of these opinions is really important because it held companies legally responsible. Their industrial activities like oil and gas drilling, wind energy production, even things like mining and construction, if those things accidentally led to the deaths of migratory birds.
Right.
We're talking about a lot of different species here, from ducks and cranes to pelicans and owls.
Yeah.
And so this legal term, incidental take, is what they call it.
Right.
It refers to the unintentional killing of these birds.
Okay.
That happens as a result of these, otherwise lawful activities.
Okay, so what does the suspension actually mean? What does it mean for these birds? What does it mean for the environment?
Well, basically what it means is that the Fish and Wildlife Service, they might not take any enforcement action against these private companies if they unintentionally kill these birds.
Wow.
And conservationists are really worried about this.
Yeah.
Because North American bird populations have already dropped almost 30% since 1970.
Wow.
While, industrial deaths aren't the main reason for this decline, these protections that we had in place, they did help prevent, more deaths.
Right.
So the key takeaway here is weakening these regulations could really have direct ecological repercussions, and it might even speed up the decline of these bird species that are already vulnerable.
It's interesting, the oil and gas industry, they seem to support this move.
Right.
They're saying they want common sense policies that both protect wildlife and support American energy dominance.
Right.
But isn't there kind of a conflict there? When they talk about common sense, aren't they actually putting short-term economic gains, ahead of potential environmental damage?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And the way the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, that goes all the way back to 1918.
Wow.
The way they interpret this incidental take thing has been a big issue for a long time.
Right.
And different administrations have had different views on it.
Okay.
During Trump's first term, there was this legal opinion that said accidental killings weren't prohibited, but that a federal judge actually struck that down.
Okay.
Then Biden's administration reversed that, and now Trump, he suspended Biden's reversal.
Right.
So it's been this real back and forth.
Yeah.
And it has real financial and ecological consequences.
I was reading that if this current view, the one that's in place now, had been in place during the Deepwater Horizon oil spill,
Right.
BP might not have had to pay about $100 million in fines.
Wow.
And that money was used for bird conservation.
Right.
That's a lot of money.
That's huge.
It really shows you how much of a financial impact these changes in regulations can have.
It really does. And it highlights how much these legal interpretations matter.
Yeah.
Both for the environment and financially.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now this weakening of environmental protection seems to be happening in another area too, and it's pretty disturbing.
Okay.
It's what's going on with FEMA. the Federal Emergency Management Agency.
Yeah, FEMA.
This is another part of this Trump Nazi bullshit we're seeing.
This sounds really bad. I mean, we're hearing that the Homeland Security Secretary wants to get rid of FEMA entirely
Yeah.
and that the agency is already a mess. What's going on there?
Well, we're hearing from multiple FEMA officials that disaster assistance has stalled, grant money is stalled, and they're even having trouble hiring people.
Really?
Yeah, and there was even a meeting with top officials from FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security.
Okay.
They were discussing ways to quickly dismantle FEMA, like even faster than this FEMA Review Council that was recently set up.
So the important thing here isn't just the delays, but what happens to all that knowledge FEMA has built up over the years.
Yeah.
I mean, if they get rid of all the experienced people,
Right.
how are they going to learn from past disasters?
Right, exactly.
This sounds incredibly disruptive, especially with hurricane season starting so soon.
Yeah, June 1st.
We need FEMA to be ready for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're hearing reports that hurricane preparedness plans are on hold right now.
On hold.
Yeah, which is, really concerning.
Yeah.
And to make matters worse, there's this new hiring process where Secretary Noem's team has to personally approve renewals for a lot of FEMA's workforce.
Well,
Yeah, like a lot of the public-facing roles, the people who are absolutely essential for disaster response.
right.
The people who verify damage, who run the recovery centers, and help victims register for aid.
Right. Those are the people on the front line.
Exactly. These Corps and reservist employees, they make up something like 74% of FEMA's workforce.
Wow.
So if their renewals are delayed, it'll have a huge impact on FEMA's ability to respond effectively to a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, if their renewals are stalled and hurricane season is about to start, it's like we're purposely making ourselves more vulnerable to these disasters.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to put it. And there are also these reports that over $100 billion in grant money and disaster assistance is frozen.
What?
Yeah, they're waiting for guidance on some of Trump's executive orders about immigration funding.
I see.
And even though they've reportedly gotten that guidance recently, it's still not clear when they're actually going to release that money.
Right.
So this is affecting states, local governments, even nonprofits like fire departments.
Right.
They all rely on this money. And it's just another example of how these administrative actions can have a ripple effect,
Yeah.
with some pretty bad real-world consequences.
And it gets even worse, right? I mean, I've heard that FEMA employees are getting fired because they supposedly went around their bosses to approve grant payments.
Yeah, that's right.
That's got to be creating a lot of fear in the agency.
It is. People are worried about getting in trouble for making payments that could be misinterpreted.
Right.
And on top of all that, there's a hiring freeze.
Really?
And there's even a plan to cut down FEMA's workforce by combining different functions and shifting some responsibilities to the states.
So they're shrinking FEMA at a time when we really need them to be strong?
Exactly. It's like they're setting them up to fail.
Okay, so then there's this whole thing with the climate change risk tool that FEMA had.
Right.
This was supposed to be a way to understand future threats, right? And it seems like it's another piece of this Trump Nazi bullshit.
It is. So FEMA developed this tool. They called it the Future Risk Index. And it gave projections of how much money counties would lose each year because of extreme weather events.
Okay.
We're talking about things like extreme heat, coastal flooding, wildfires, hurricanes, drought, all that.
I see.
It even had a risk rating for each county. And it used data from all over the federal government, like historical weather data and climate projections.
So this sounds like it was really valuable for local governments.
Yeah, they could use it to plan and prepare for the future.
So why'd they get rid of it? What does that tell us about how they view climate change?
Well, they deleted the tool after Trump came back.
Really?
And before that, they tried to downplay the whole climate angle.
How so?
Well, they changed the name. They got rid of anything about emission scenarios, stuff like that.
Interesting.
And one person who worked on the project said there was a real culture of fear at FEMA about anything related to climate change.
Wow.
People were afraid of getting in trouble if they worked on those issues.
So they're basically trying to ignore the fact that the climate is changing.
Yeah, it seems that way.
So they got rid of this important tool just because they didn't like what it was telling them.
Pretty much. But the good news is that the Guardian was able to recreate the tool using the data that was still available.
Okay, so the information's still out there.
Yeah. And what it shows is that if we don't do something about emissions, these climate-driven events are going to get a lot worse.
Right.
By the middle of the century, counties in New Jersey, New York, and Texas could have the biggest risks from coastal flooding while places like Las Vegas, Dallas, and St. Louis would be hit hardest by extreme heat.
Wow.
Wildfires are going to be a huge problem in parts of California, and Florida is going to be dealing with a lot of hurricanes.
So it sounds like things are going to get pretty bad.
Yeah, and the financial costs are going to be huge too. Some counties could be looking at annual losses of $191 million or more.
That's a lot of money.
It is, and it really shows how expensive climate change is going to be.
Okay, so now let's talk about the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA.
NOAA, okay.
They're in charge of weather forecasting and climate monitoring. And they're also facing some serious challenges because of this Trump Nazi bullshit.
So what's going on at NOAA? How are they being affected by all this?
Well, apparently there's this new rule that says the commerce chief has to personally approve any contracts or extensions that are over $100,000.
Wow.
It sounds like a small thing, but it's really messing things up at NOAA.
How so? I mean, what kind of problems are we seeing, and how is it affecting their work?
Well, contractors all over the country are being affected because there are huge delays in getting contracts signed off.
Oh, wow.
Some contracts have even expired or been canceled because the review process takes so long.
Really?
Yeah, and people are worried that even really important contracts, ones that have already been awarded, might get canceled or changed based on the commerce chief's personal opinions. So it's not about what NOAA needs, it's about what this one person thinks.
Pretty much, yeah.
And how many contracts are we talking about here?
Dozens of them are just sitting there waiting for approval.
Wow.
It's a huge bottleneck that's preventing NOAA from doing its job.
So this is affecting the really important work that NOAA does, like forecasting the weather and monitoring the climate.
Exactly. It's making everything much less efficient.
And it could even be dangerous.
Yeah. For example, the National Weather Service almost lost its ability to process data from satellites and weather stations in real time.
What?
Yeah, because they had to wait for a contract extension for the software that they use in all the forecast offices around the country.
What software is that?
It's called AWIPS. And they managed to get a last-minute extension, but it really shook people up.
Yeah, I bet.
I mean, they need to be able to process that data quickly to feed the weather models and spot storms as they develop.
Right, of course.
Any delays could mean that people don't get warnings in time.
That's scary, the idea that we might not get warnings about severe weather because of some bureaucratic mess.
And this isn't the only example.
Okay.
Other NOAA contracts, like the ones for the people who operate the weather satellites,
Mm-hmm.
have also been stuck in this approval process.
Really?
And it's led to layoffs at some of the contractor companies. Even basic things like facility services at NOAA headquarters have been suspended because of contract issues.
Wow, so this is really affecting the basic operations of NOAA.
It really is.
Huh.
And former NOAA Administrator Rick Spinrad, he called the whole thing outrageously inefficient.
Well, yeah.
And he's worried that the people who are reviewing these contract recommendations are political appointees who don't actually know anything about the technical side of things.
Well, that's a problem.
Yeah, it makes it seem like NOAA's mission is being eroded.
Yeah.
And
Well,
all
yeah,
of this is affecting the organizations that NOAA funds to do research, which could mean that our storm track and intensity forecasts become less accurate.
Oh, wow.
And even really big things like buying new Hurricane Hunter aircraft and upgrading IT systems all have to go through this same approval process now.
So it's like they're trying to slow NOAA down at every turn.
Pretty much, yeah.
And I've also heard about potential staff cuts at NOAA.
Yeah, NOAA recently laid off about 800 probationary employees.
Really?
Most of them were rehired and put on administrative leave, but they're planning more cuts.
That doesn't sound good.
No. And experts are worried that all of this, the contract delays and the staff cuts, is going to make it a lot harder for NOAA to collect the data we need and issue timely warnings.
Right.
Some people are even worried that the National Weather Service might be privatized or downsized.
That would be a huge change.
Yeah, and some argue that it would upset the balance between the government, universities, and private companies in the weather enterprise.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what about the Hurricane Hunter flights?
Yeah, those are really important.
They provide data that's crucial for forecasting hurricanes.
Exactly. And experts are worried that these layoffs at NOAA could actually ground some of those flights.
So we could lose valuable data that helps us predict hurricanes more accurately.
Yeah, it's a real concern.
Is anyone pushing back against this?
Yeah, at least one senator has asked the Commerce Department for more information about these cuts, so there's definitely some concern in Congress.
So as we can see, this Trump Nazi bullshit is a really broad problem.
Yeah.
It's affecting the environment, our safety during natural disasters, and our ability to understand and prepare for severe weather.
Exactly.
They're weakening protections for migratory birds. They're basically ignoring climate change by getting rid of data. And they're undermining FEMA and NOAA.
Yeah.
These are the agencies that are supposed to be protecting us.
It's all connected.
So what does this mean for you, the listener?
Yeah.
It means the natural world could be less protected. It means we might not be able to respond to disasters as effectively. And it means we might not understand the threats from climate change as well.
Right. And all of this could have a real impact on your life.
So what can we do about it?
Well, staying informed is a good first step.
Okay.
You can follow meteorologist Rob Jones on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube to learn more about these issues and stay up to date on what's happening.
Right.
He's got a lot of great information, and he talks about these things in more detail on his Meteorology Matters playlist.
So here's something to think about. What happens when the agencies we rely on to understand and respond to the world around us, what happens when those agencies are weakened?
Yeah.
It's something we all need to consider because it affects everyone.
It does.